What's up, guys? It's Friday, November 13th. Let's talk PlayStation. PS4 firmware 3.11 is out now. You have to download it if you want to play online because Sony knows that you need this firmware because it's going to improve the software stability for you. With that out of the way, let's talk about something a bit more interesting. So this past week, Eric Jensen, who is the senior technical game designer for Sony Bend, tweeted about how he was getting his hotel booked for PlayStation Experience, and subsequently the tweet was deleted, which prompted a lot of people to say, whoa, Sony Bend's going to PSX, what's going on there? Could we see Sony Bend's game at PlayStation Experience? Now, usually this is kind of one of those things where people are like overreacting. Is it possible that their game would be announced at PSX? I mean, sure, anything's possible, but it's like such a small little nuanced detail where it's like, calm down, like it is PlayStation Experience, the guy works at Sony. Even if he didn't work at Sony, it's just one of those things where it's PlayStation Experience, it's open to the public, you know, it doesn't have to be business related. The guy could easily just be going just to go and enjoy it, because sometimes we forget that people that work in the games industry are also gamers themselves and they enjoy these things. So, you know, there's that situation, right? Like, oh, he's just going there to just be there for PSX. But there is also that thinking in the back of your mind, what if it is for Sony Bend's PS4 game? Because, well, we should be seeing it at some point. Now, I'm kind of 50-50 here. Maybe we'll see it, but maybe we won't see it because, well, they just started hiring a lot of people for their project just a few months ago, really. So I wouldn't expect them to have anything to show just yet and have any sort of formal announcement. And also, if you kind of look at the roadmap of Sony's developers right now, we have a lot of titles that are already announced but not out yet, like Horizon Zero Dawn, Media Molecule's Dreams. We just got the announcement of Quantic Dream's game, so we got a lot of titles in the pipeline. Uncharted 4 still hasn't come out yet, so because we have so much announced already, I'm not sure if Sony wants to keep announcing even more, because then it would get to the point where Sony's going to be exhausting the amount of announcements they can make at events. So it's just a wait and see sort of situation, basically. So realistically, we don't have a whole lot of PlayStation news to talk about this past week. I mean, it seems more like a Nintendo week, really, because they're direct and the interesting things they announced, like Cloud being in Smash Brothers, which is bizarre, I know, but alright, so the one thing that we could talk about is the October NPD came out, and surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, Xbox One actually beat PlayStation 4 for the month of October for hardware sales. Now, PlayStation 4 still took it in terms of software sales. Not surprising there, considering we all know Sony has market leadership, so most people own PS4s, therefore most people are buying their games on PlayStation 4. X1, of course, clearly won October because of the launch of Halo 5 Guardians, which was the best-selling game in October. But what's going to be really interesting, of course, is November and December NPD, because that's going to be going into not only the holiday season, but the fact that Sony now has a very affordable PlayStation 4 priced at $300. And not only is it priced at $300, but specifically even these really good Black Friday deals that are coming out, you've got PS4s that are going to be selling for $300 flat. That is including extra controllers, a whole bunch of extra games, or an extra gift card, depending on the retailer that you go to. But it's going to be really interesting, you know, and I'm pretty confident that Sony will most likely take the holidays more or less. Like, they're probably going to win November and December NPD, especially with that low price drop. But it'll be just interesting to see, I guess, how well they do, because demand for PS4 has been pretty damn good for how long now, so to have an even more affordable PlayStation 4 right around the holidays is just like gravy for Sony. So if you remember Shaid Ahmad for PlayStation, he was the head of strategic content for PlayStation. This guy's job was to bring fantastic games to the PlayStation platform. Specifically, he worked very closely with independent developers, and this is the guy that was responsible for a lot of great games getting ported over to PlayStation. Part of that whole sort of movement that Sony's been doing, with the release of PlayStation 4, and of course with the struggling of Vita and trying to get Vita to get some more games. This guy's whole basic job was to just get some good games on the platform, no matter where they came from. And yeah, the majority came from independent developers. But either way, good games are good games. And so recently he announced that he's going to be leaving Sony, and he's going to be pursuing going back to game development. Basically, he wants to leave his job at Sony, trying to, you know, just be sort of that position where he's moving games around and working for a hardware manufacturer. He wants to make games himself, and this is a bit of an interesting discussion, because like we just talked about with Eric Jensen at Sony Bend, people that work in the industry, you know, they work in the industry because they like games. You know, they care about games, they like video games. So it's you see this often a lot, and we don't have to talk about it because I don't know, it's just never really something that makes a whole lot of headlines. But Shahid did a good job at Sony, and I like that he's leaving it to pursue something that he really wants to do, which is actually make video games. Alright, this next news story is beating a dead horse, but you know, we have to talk about it because I'm a Jak fan, you guys are Jak fans, you're always asking me about Jak, we're always speculating about Naughty Dog and their future with Jak and Daxter, so Naughty Dog did comment on this recently. Naughty Dog's community strategist, Arnie Meyer, was talking to Finder.com in an interview and gave us some more insight about, you know, the future of Jak and Daxter and if they're going to do it. And once again, it's not really good news. What we've always been hearing, actually. He said, "I would not bet in favor of it. We did try it. We did try. I mean, our fans really love Jak and Daxter, so we did try. I think you've seen the concept art that came out when we were exploring it before we settled on The Last of Us. But all the directions we were trying to take, it just didn't feel great. So much of these great decisions is based on gut and instinct. We kept thinking, it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't feel right. The types of stories we're telling right now really are grounded in realism." Finder.com followed up with, "The land of precursors is a very different one from that of Uncharted or The Last of Us." And Arnie followed up saying, "Yeah, to go to fantasy would be a big shift for us. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't be able to do it in the future." So, I mean, of course you look at that last part and you have a little bit of hope there. We all have that little ounce of hope that we want to see Jak and Daxter come back. I mean, we all know I would love that. And that's what I always tell, you know, that's what I always tell you guys, especially with like game developers, and it seems that in recent years a lot of developers have learned to keep their mouth shut in terms of saying, we're never doing this again, this will never happen, we will never go back to this, because it seems like more often than not it does end up happening where the developer does have that interest again, or just the publisher themselves, the owner of the IP, sends the IP somewhere else and gets a game made or something like that. You know, you can't say never. So I think it's a safe play for Arnie to say something like that, where it's like maybe in the future. But I mean, Naughty Dog has said this time and time again. They don't want to do Jak and Daxter right now because it's not the direction that they're going for. And Arnie really hit the nail on the head there. It's fantasy. You know, Jak and Daxter is a fantasy type game. That is just not what Naughty Dog's been doing in recent years. They've been doing Uncharted and The Last of Us. Those are very realistic stories with human characters. I mean, you don't need me to tell you guys the differences between Jak and Daxter and something like Uncharted or The Last of Us. It's just, you know, it's night and day really between the direction of those games. And like Arnie mentioned, this is something Naughty Dog actually did try. I mean, we've talked about this how many times now, but if you are a new viewer to this channel and you're just catching up on this topic, Naughty Dog has actually started working on Jak 4 before. They decided to work on Jak 4. They did early kind of looks at it. They did concept art and things like that, but they realized that the direction they were going with that kind of that universe with Jak and Daxter, it just didn't look right. I mean, I'm probably showing you footage right now of like their art book or something, and the Jak that they were making just wasn't the Jak that we know, and it's good that Naughty Dog backed away from it, because I wouldn't have been happy with that, because that's not the Jak and Daxter game that we all wanted. You know, that's not the game that we fell in love with. So, you know, I totally agree with what they wanted to do. This is coming from somebody who wants a proper Jak and Daxter 4 from Naughty Dog more than anybody else, but if they're not going to do it the right way, then don't do it. So I'm happy that we don't have a Jak 4, because if that's what it was going to be, then, you know, I can't say that I would hate it, because it doesn't exist and therefore I haven't tried it, you know, but I'm okay with it not being here in the proper form that I would have wanted it to be in, and I'm sure many other fans would have wanted it to be. And lastly, for our most important news story, I know you probably thought the firmware is the most important one, but this one actually takes the cake. This guy was caught masturbating in front of a PlayStation 4 in a retail store. Yeah, there's a video and everything. Apparently, this guy purposely walked to this section of the store right in front of the PlayStations and decided now was a better time than ever to pull it out and start putting some work in. Now, here's the thing, guys. I love my PlayStation just as much as the next guy. But, you know, there's a reason why we buy these things. To put them in the privacy of our own home. You see what I'm saying? There's a time and place for everything, and there's a reason why they sell them. Those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. Check out this week's episode of Ryan on Gaming. It was about 3D platformers versus the games of today, specifically that genre of games. You know, 3D platformers back in the PS2, the GameCube days, you know, Xbox, even further back, you know, the 3D platformers. I love those games. But, you know, compare them to game nowadays, we don't really have 3D platformers anymore. You know, what's going on there, the whole versus thing. good little topic there. And Jak 2 is up, whatever part is up right now. I don't know. We're getting very close to the end of the game, so we'll be having some discussions about what Let's Play you'd like to see next, and that'll be all well and good. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all for talking with me. I'll see you all next Friday. Ooh, that was a really good ending. That was like a one-shotter right there. Obviously, there are cuts in the show. So obviously, when there are cuts, it's because it either doesn't feel right or I flub over my words. But realistically, I flub over my words a lot, and it still ends up into the final cut. So this is what you get when you subscribe to this channel, man. Gold. And people masturbating in front of PlayStations.